museum staff members that were involved and instrumental in producing the exhibition. So that includes our exhibition designer, Taylor Wright, collections manager, Jessica Kramer, and certain students who helped hang your show. So Aubrey Galifant, Camille Jones, and Ashley Savage. So thank you to all of you who helped bring this together. Few housekeeping points. We have snacks and beverages on the bar. You're welcome to help yourself. You're welcome to bring that into the theater. We also have public restrooms around the corner just past the elevator. The museum will stay open until 8 p.m. tonight, so you will have some time to see the show. We will go 40 minutes-ish. Okay, and then there will be times for some Q&A afterward. So please keep those questions in mind during John's talk. And then you're welcome to mingle with us afterward. So now I will introduce our artist and speaker for today. In addition to studying at UVU for his associate's degree, John Sproul received his BFA from the University of Utah with an emphasis in painting and drawing. He has exhibited his work nationally and internationally with solo exhibitions at the CICA Museum in South Korea, Granary Art Center in Ephraim, the Utah Museum of Contemporary Art in Salt Lake City, the Bountiful Davis Art Center, and the Kimball Art Center in Park City. He has also exhibited in group exhibitions at the Hudson Valley MoCA in Peekskill, New York, the Gertrude Herbert Institute of Art in Augusta, Georgia, the Painting Center in New York City, the J. Paul Getty Museum of Art, and the California Center for Contemporary Art, both in Los Angeles, California. He's also participated in shows abroad in France, Germany, Hungary, Italy, Malaysia, Portugal, and more. So please join me in welcoming John for his art talk.
Thank you, Emily. And some of that's actually true. Sorry that I turned this off. I want to thank Emily and the staff of the museum for their generosity, for supporting me in exhibiting my work in this beautiful building. So I just add more thank you to what Emily said. I want to thank all of you who have come, especially those who have come from Salt Lake and endured the extra hour of traffic. I promise I did not plan that. But it's really, I'm really grateful for everybody's support, because without your support, I couldn't do this. I couldn't do what I do. So thank you so much. So I thought about, in order for you to understand what I'm doing now, that I should tell you my story of how I became connected in the arts. So up here you have Thumper, that maybe some of you remember, us older people. But Thumper was a main character in one of the original Disney animations of Bambi from 1942. And my great uncle, Eric Larson, worked on Thumper and a lot of the animals from those movies and what after that. And he was one of the original 9 animators. They called him the 9 Old Men. And my grandfather was also an animator, but he became a machinist to support his family. And then on my father's side, I grew up with a family of musicians. I'm the black sheep of the family who can't sing or play an instrument. I did buy a guitar a few years ago, but now my son just plays it and I still haven't learned anything about it. But I have very fond memories of hearing my father when I was growing up. Playing John Denver's song so beautifully. And of large family gatherings with sing-alongs at my grandparents' home when I was just a little kid and all these old people singing. It was wonderful. There was harmonica. Anyway, this was the backdrop of my, the creative backdrop of my childhood. I skipped one. There we go. John Denver, there you go. It's going to be hard for me to do 2 things at once, so just bear with me as I go through this. This was a drawing from 1973 when I was 5 years old. As you can see, I am already a master of my craft, like he said. And you can sort of tell the subtle angst of a 5-year-old who's had to spend the last 2 years of his life as the oldest, sharing his life and everything in it with the little brother. My brother was born in 1971, who happens to be here, and also one of my closest friends now, so we've worked this out. But he was born in 1971, the same year there was a major earthquake in California where we lived, and at that time I thought he created it. So I liked to draw a lot as a kid, and I would take inanimate objects and add faces to them to animate them. I don't have any images of that, but just imagine cars and toys and potatoes and whatever with lips and eyes talking to each other as the drawing comes, it progresses and comes to an end. I also took summer classes, art classes a couple times that my grandparents paid for. My mom's going to fact check me on these things, and the only thing I remember about that was that the woman had a pond in her backyard with frogs in it, and the terrible smell of the aerosol spray that they use to spray our pastel drawings in her garage. In my early teens, I was really into hero story drawings. This one's very political, as you can tell. USSR, for those of you who don't know, is Russia. And I acted them out as I drew. So this was, over the course of the drawing, all these, lasers, of course, all, very high tech, future focused. But I also did drawings with sharks and dinosaurs and monsters, and a hero who barely escaped whatever by the end of the drawing. And I was really into that. In high school, I also took art classes, but my art teacher was really a tennis coach, and I was way more interested in the girl sitting next to me than I was in the Midwestern still lifes that he put together. After high school, I continued to draw and did things like these. This is probably from My Heart at Wounded Knee book. I could take photos wherever I found them and just draw them. When I was 20 years old, I thought I should go to college. And so I went to UVCC, which is Utah Valley Community College, which is now UVU, because it was only a few blocks from my house where I lived. And I went to enroll, and they said, well, you have to declare a major to enroll. And I thought, well, I'm good at math and I'm good at art, but I leaned a little bit more towards the art. So I'm like, well, what kind of art majors do you have? And they said, well, we have commercial art and graphic design, which I learned later has nothing to do with art. And on the spot, I said, okay, I'll do that. And I spent 2 years getting that degree. In 1990, I graduated about the exact same time that computers began to take over my job, which I wasn't too bothered by because I didn't really like what I was doing and I didn't really want to get a job. So I transferred to the University of Utah. So I thought I was really good. I mean, look at these, they're amazing. And I even went so much as to try to skip some of the required foundation programs, classes in the art program there, which did not work. And I realized that my matter-of-fact proclamation is that I'm really good was completely wrong. When I got there, other students were way better than me. And maybe you guys know who this might be, or this. I didn't know who they were. At 23, I had no idea who these guys were. I knew nothing about art history. I knew nothing about the art world. I knew nothing. And so I very quickly realized I had a very poor education. And I worked, and I thought, I can fix this. I just need to work hard. And so I worked 7 days a week, studying, learning art history, reading the classics, which I found out later a lot of people had never read anyway, but I read them anyway. A lot of time in the library, devouring everything that I could, which led me to studying psychology and philosophy. And in the evenings, as I learned art history, I learned to teach myself to paint. So after class, I'd come home in my little apartment, and I would prop up these little things I got from, I don't know, Walmart or whatever, and paint with them, and learning to paint that way. My poor parents have several of those paintings in their house. And as I learned art history, I painted it. And that's how I learned. I did Impressionism, Post-Impressionism, I skipped Cubism because I hated Picasso even then. You know, I just that's how I learned. And in this accelerated pace, I grew, and I changed a lot, and I grew a lot. And anybody know who this is? This is Willem de Kooning, Woman and Bicycle. He was a contemporary of Jackson Pollock and was part of the abstract expressionist movement, the only figurative abstract expressionist at the time. I was taking like a survey of American art history, and they showed this exact painting at the beginning, and I'm like, this isn't art. This is horrible. I was offended. By the end of the class, he was my favorite painter. That's how dramatic the change was. So I continued on. I was taking the foundation classes. I was drawing. I was learning to paint. I kind of liked it, and I was going where I wanted to go, but I didn't know where it was I wanted to go. If that makes any sense. And I took this class from John Erickson, and I don't have any images of the paintings from that time because this is pre-internet, you know, pre-everything. But just imagine these large, heroic, epic, loosely painted figure paintings. You know, just they were amazing. And I saw those, and I'm like, I know what I want to do. I want to be a painter. Such a profound experience. That's what I decided to do. So I continued on in the art program, learning academic figure drawing, figure painting, and portrait drawing from Paul Davis, who this is. I believe he's still alive in Helper, Utah. And I continued working hard. Some days I'd draw 6 hours a day, and I drew most days. Just trying to catch up as I thought I was trying to do. And at the same time, whoa, wait a minute. Here's some examples of what I was doing. Here's a model, nude model figure drawing. I guess it wasn't nude. Anyway, some portraiture. These are so big on here. Self-portrait. I was beginning to lose my hair, and I subconsciously, I think, made my forehead a little bigger than it is normally. And then some paintings. So I was doing this academic work, but at the same time, I was doing experimenting. This is tack head. It's 48 by 48 inches on the raw side of masonite panel. Don't paint on the raw side masonite panel. It absorbs all your paint. But anyway, I was experimenting, so that's what I did. And then this one, I took some pieces from some ceramic class I did and cut out the head and just, messing around with stuff. And this was a pretentious thing about life and death. So I started taking classes from Sam Wilson, who died a year or two ago, and ended up being a great mentor to me. And he supported and encouraged the experimental work that I was doing. This is a watercolor painting, 40 by 36 inches, that I did in one of his classes. And this, I think, was the beginning of where I felt like I was moving from being a painter to being an artist, because I was beginning to go beyond myself in the work. And this was done by taking watercolor paint and mixing it with large puddles of water, and working it till this happened. And I also was taking monoprint classes at the time, and they helped the process of making them added to my development in that direction of moving beyond who I was. And then this painting here was, I think, the first painting. This painting was influenced by the watercolors and the monotypes. It's an acrylic on canvas painting. And it's the first one that I think that I went completely into the unknown. And this was an absolutely terrifying experience for me. It felt like psychologically jumping off a cliff into utter darkness, extremely uncomfortable. But But Sam helped me through this. He helped me walk through this, as, crying or whatever I was doing. And each time I did another painting, did another work, it got a little easier until at some point it became uncomfortable not to be uncomfortable. And I feel very lucky that I have people there to support me as I push through those fears and those difficulties, because it's an easy place to get stuck. So I was very lucky to do that. I also explored the unknown in drawings. This is a large oil stick drawing that I did. And this is, the process of making this drawing is I covered it with graphite and then used an eraser to make the drawing. Sorry, I'm getting lost in my notes. So I graduated from the University of Utah in 1993 and continued working. When I had a studio, I painted. And when I didn't have a studio, I made drawings in the bedroom that I rented. Big drawings in my little bedroom. So in 1994, I went to BYU, and I was drawn to BYU for two reasons. One, they had 2 German faculty, and I loved all things German post-1945 and pre-1938. And it was also really cheap. So I went to BYU, and one of the classes I took, it was like this 6-hour Friday afternoon class. And I thought, I'm a graduate student, I can do whatever I want. I kind of was allowed to do that in undergraduate the last year I was there. And I get there, and it's like, this is a landscape painting class, you have to make landscapes. The professor was a landscape painter. I'm like, well, okay, I've never done this before, I'll give it a go. And so here we go, for singing. And this piece, I believe, was done on a bed sheet. So in undergrad, I had a bit of financial aid, and I had less in grad school, so I didn't always have money to buy canvas, so I just used old bed sheets. This actually still exists, weirdly enough. So bed sheets are archival to a point. It's been, 20 years, 30 years. So I also was really getting into Carl Jung and the archetypes and the collective unconscious. And this drawing, that's my little nephew up there, who's now like 30 something. And this drawing were influenced by those studies. So I did that, and then I just I'm going back to the figure, whatever. And I went to the figure, but instead of working on the outside, I worked with internal components, skeletal and organs and sort of things to make these very lively, colorful, lighthearted paintings. And I talked about things in terms of finding the infinite in the finite, the universal and the personal, and the otherness of being. Very, down-to-earth speaking. And I did these for a while when I was there. Some of the, this one's probably actually that size. And the process was a process of removal. I would do those drawings you see with big, giant palette knives, and then I put all this wet paint over it, and then I'd cover it with the dark paint, and then I'd take a squirt bottle and remove it. And the custodial people at my studio hated me because there would be puddles all the time. Poor BYU students. This is Neil Hadlock, who was a professor of mine at BYU, a friend and a mentor, amazing person. And he understood and supported what I was doing when most other people did not. it's really important to have these people in your life, these kind of people. I think it only takes one. I was lucky to have 4 in my academic years, the ones I've mentioned. So I feel very fortunate. They all helped dramatically in my development and helping me to keep from giving up when it became very difficult. In 1997, I left BYU and moved to Los Angeles, because that's what everybody does. They move to Los Angeles right after school. And I returned to the figure as a whole. I was exploring the otherness of being, the otherness of the self through the body. I focused on these simple compositions, direct compositions, solitary figures, relying on the subconscious input on what I was putting into it subconsciously to carry the work. And I let the creative process direct me on where to go. And I was looking to go deeper in an understanding of the self in this work. And I did this for a lot of years. I worked with fragmenting the body. Those are actual slides, sort of like an armor there. People who don't know what slides are, I'm glad you don't know. They were horrible for artists. They're very expensive. Then I dealt with the body as essence. An essence of itself. Trying to look deeper into that otherness that is difficult to see, but at least I'm aware is present. In 2004, I returned to Utah, and I continued to explore. I worked with thick paint, really thick paint, and thin paint, looking at very simplistic interiors. I did blind drawings, feeling myself through the drawing. What the process was is I'd be looking at whatever my source was, and I would draw without looking at the paper. And then I'd repeat that process until the work gained authority unto itself beyond the process. And this was a metaphor, sorry, I lost my place. This was a metaphor of how we see through a glass darkly, and how we give so much authority to our distorted perspectives. There's a few of these. And then I started to work with the color as a main element. Working with the palette knife mostly. And then I did these powder graphite drawings. Taking powder graphite, a lot of water, and creating these, I don't know, I think they're quite happy, but you may think differently. And I used the same method I used with the watercolor paintings I did in undergraduate at the U. This time it was my own studio, so I didn't want to clean up all the puddles. And then I went very minimal, as minimal as I can get, really focusing on the body and its language, to look intently at it. I combined bodies as one, to be seen as one, to look at the language even from a different angle so I'd see it more clearly. Adding more color. And then I looked at old masters' paintings. I was curious about the body languages they used. And how, if it was relevant to now, and how it speaks to now. So I removed all the environment and all the skimpy little pieces of cloth they put that were considered modesty at the time, to really focus and to see clearly what was happening with the body and those compositions that are so full of landscape and little bits of cloth that distract us from the language. This is what I was doing in 2019. This is my best friend Dave Allen and I. This was the day we got back from a week-long backpacking trip. We're walking his 2 dogs, you can see at the bottom, and his cat, you can see with the stroller. And this was this kind of epitomizes our relationship. In 2019, he was diagnosed with melanoma cancer, stage 4. It was so difficult to me to think that he was going to go, that I thought he could beat it. He thought so too, but we were both wrong. And then on May 17th of that year, he passed away. I was traumatized, I was overwhelmed, I felt lost, alone. I was in agonizing despair. I couldn't function normally. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect how dramatic it was going to be. I didn't understand how much I loved him until he was gone and how important it was to me. I still feel this deep loss, as you might be able to tell my voice, but it's become a part of me, and so I'm used to it. He had a profound, him leaving had a profound impact on my work. I clearly saw that the world and everyone around us were very connected to each other. And everything outside of my body is a part of who I am. And so I started making work, putting the body in the world. So I was hurting, I was full of grief, and I knew that I needed to work that out or it was going to eat me. So I began the healing process through the ritual of making art. And I made these drawings. The process is why I would take a lot of different photos of people and pick out parts. I took to pick out this arm because it felt right, or this hand or that leg, and put them together to be one, to be a whole. And I did this because that's how I felt. I felt like I was a bunch of scattered parts that needed to be put back together again. I worked on this body of work for 2 years, and in that time it went from being specifically about my loss of Dave to loss in the broader sense. I'm going to quote myself here. The figure exists in a state of isolation and fragmentation, mirroring this disorienting experience of profound loss, suspended in an undefined space between presence and absence that reflect its emotional turbulence. How it can disintegrate one's sense of reality. The figures struggle against impermanence, embodying the transient and fragile nature of living after loss. At the same time, their presence conveys a quiet strength, a testament to the lasting impact and transformation that loss and grief can bring. So as I was doing these drawings, I was still painting. And I felt like I was really starting over. And so I started with my childhood. And when I was a child, I was heavy and I was shamed for it. And so I started with body images, work about body image. This title of this painting, Am. It starts out at the top of the text. It's like what he is not. I'm heavy and I am not bad, and it moves forward, gradually transitioning until the final statement, which it's kind of cropped at the bottom. I am heavy and I am enough. This is the Fabulous Four, as I like to see them. Taken from Beatles on Abbey Road. I took these 4 women who are sisters, mothers, wives, friends, who are way more important to the people in their lives than the Beatles. And I painted them. And I wanted to paint them for what they were. They were beautiful. They are beautiful. And I did this not only to deconstruct the superficial social constructs of beauty, but I also did this to work through the negative feelings that I had from having a larger body at one point. Then I began to make work that was influenced by my just walking through life and observing things. So my son Aiden and I were on a trip to San Diego, and we're down by the convention center there, which is quite large. And we saw this line of people all in exercise clothes, and it was mostly women. And we kind of wondered about this, what's this? And then we discovered that it was a jazzercise convention, which I had no idea that still existed, but there it was. And so we thought, well, maybe they're going to this convention to learn, proper, better exercise techniques or something to that effect, because they were all dressed up in exercise clothes. When we got to the front of the line, there were just kiosks to buy more exercise clothes. So this came out of that. So maybe all of us think that, I don't know, but I've thought that I'm a good person who's always done good things. And one time I was thinking back on my life, and I was thinking, well, maybe that's not the case. Actually, as I thought about it, it wasn't the case. But we could misremember things or not even be aware of times when we've been jerks to people. And so this painting talks about all the people that we've either stepped on or left behind as we walk through life. This painting is in the show upstairs. I was at the gym one day and I was staring off into space, as one often does when all the blood is drained out of your head into whatever muscle group you're working on. And this woman comes up 4, maybe 5 feet in front of me at best, facing away from me, and she starts stretching, warming up, doing full, half body bends with her butt, like right here in front of my face. And I thought that was really unusual, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't intentional, or at least I don't know why it would be intentional. So I started to look at all the things that, pay attention to what we do in the gym for all of us that go to the gym, all these weird things, these body poses, and things that outside of the gym are not normal, and some of them very inappropriate. And also what we do to get attention to compensate for our lack of self-value. So I went to Paris for the first time a couple of years ago, and I traveled a lot through with the metro. And for those of you who have been there, you might notice that they have a very militant and precise system. They give you a few seconds to get into the metro, or the doors close, and if you're not all the way in, oh well. So I, on a number of occasions, was pulling people's arms and legs out of the doors and their bags to help them so they didn't get cut off. And then I went to Versailles and learned a lot about Napoleon and his military genius, and I just thought like those two things just had to go together. This is from a body of work that I just finished called Happy Family, which I started about 2 years ago. These are all monoprints or monotypes. My youngest son started driving a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years ago, and I all of a sudden had a lot of time on my hands. And I realized that my kids didn't need me as much as they used to. For 23 years, I had driven them all around. And those of you who are parents know that that could take 100 miles a day at sometimes. But so I realized I was entering into a different stage of parenting, into a post-adolescent stage, and I took the time to reflect on how well I did as a parent. And so I asked myself questions. Had I done enough? Did I teach them enough? Did I love them enough? Was I enough? And I realized that I didn't have answers to those questions, but they brought some sort of uncertainty. And that really brought forward to me the idea of the uncertainty in relationships. And so this work, this series of monoprints, using my family as a metaphor to talk about the broader human experience and reflect the relationships that we're in, the feelings of uncertainty, uneasiness, and resilience that come out of relationships. I use my family as a lens to talk about the increasing polarization in our society. So my family and I are very close. At least hopefully they agree with me. And when one of us struggles, all of us struggle. When one of us is affected, we're all affected. And it reverberates amongst us all. Despite our differences, and challenges, we stay close and we care for one another. And this work expresses how it feels to be in a society where our sense of shared community is being lost. So I'm an American white man, just in case you don't know. And I grew up learning to hide my feelings so I could survive in the social constructs that I was in. And I think this might be true of most, if not all men to one degree or another. We have been indoctrinated that showing emotion and being vulnerable is weak. And it's not, it's not being a man, and that stoicism is admired. Studies show that the American white men are in a state of mental health crisis, and suicide rates are up. The indoctrination of stoicism conditions us, leaves us feeling isolated, lost, and the stigma of not getting help adds to that crisis. I've spent many years in my life trying to overcome the barriers that I needed to survive emotionally and psychologically, and I still am not fully connected to all my feelings. It's a very difficult thing to overcome. These drawings express what it's like to feel, what it feels like to be a man, both how we feel and how we see through those emotions. And this may be true of all men, but as a white man, that's all I can speak to. So what are the results of this crisis? Studies say there's an increase in risk-taking behavior, violence, abuse, rage, and extreme behavior. In these drawings, I am using editorial photos of the Black Lives Matter riots as a source to talk about and express what I feel is happening to us and what we are doing to each other as a society. And so with all these, the text that is in them was actually in the photo, and with these I've twisted them a bit to twist the meaning further. These are all non-military citizens prepared to meet the protesters. This is right outside Arby's. The text "Pucker Up" on that sign there was actually there in the photos. I stepped away from politics many years ago because it just made me really angry all the time, and I didn't want to be angry. But I feel like what's happening now is more about how we treat each other as humanity than about politics. I didn't really know where to go with that, and I went to Spain. I can't remember his name now. I went to Spain to see a Spanish artist there where he did a bunch of drawings of the abuse of power and of the slaughter in Spain in the 30s. And he also did these black paintings that were just profound. At the same time, he was doing court paintings too, nice, happy portraitures and stuff. And I felt this is I can do this. This is a path for me to take, and that's why I've been working on black papers. Is sort of a nod to his black paintings. Francisco Goya, that's who it is. So the rest of this work is in the show, and it's about how we share spaces, expressing the feelings of fear, anxiety, self-doubt, loneliness, and resilience. It is a mirror to our modern disconnection populated by selfies, likes, and algorithms, slowly unraveling the myth of how it is to be seen and revealing how it is to truly feel. The title of this painting, Singing, comes from the sirens in Greek mythology. There's 4 women in conversation with us, none seeing the other. The speaker is lost in what she is saying. The woman next to her on her left is listening but not listening, lost her own thoughts. And on the right, one looks back and the other one looks forward. They're all close together, but they are far apart. March of the Fireflies. There's a large group of people gathered together in a remote location. They're together but grouped apart and spaced according to their comfort of their personal space and social conditioning, and are comfortable in these formations. Even the ones that are close together are not engaged, but they're all heading in the same direction or about to begin to do so. It's the bearded lady. The subway is a great example of people being in a small space and not recognizing anybody else there. In this photo, no one is acknowledging anyone else in the photo, in the painting, even though they are in close proximity. The bearded man is looking at us, but even he is distant and obscured. Das Boots, another example. They're even closer together and even more removed from each other. It is like being at Costco with everyone driving around those big cars, like no one else is there. I know no one's had that experience. So for me, making art has been a way for me to articulate emotional states that I don't have direct access to be able to express them and gain understanding through those emotions. Being an artist and experiencing the arts has informed the way I live. A lot of people believe that an artist's life work is their artwork. I believe it is the life lived. The creative process has helped me to tear down the walls that I built to survive social systems, to access my vulnerability, which I believe is the real strength and power of who we are. Through this process, these years I've been doing this, 30 years, I have come to understand the great power and necessity of connection, honesty, and generosity. For me, the most important part of the arts is the people. My work shows how it feels like to be disconnected and isolated from others and from our own selves, which can be hard to look at, but it also gives hope through the strength and resilience present in the work. I hope that despite all the heaviness of the situation, we can change. We are so disconnected as a society. It is devastating. But we can counter that by forgiving, accepting, and connecting whenever possible. The important question for me, to you, that you can give me an answer or just for yourself, is what does the work tell you? Have a conversation with it and see what it has to say. Thank you. I know I covered everything, but are there any questions? Yes.
Do you have any one or two periods of your past work that you hold on that's dearest to you? Or are they all dearest to you?
I hold on to some pieces. I have work from 1992, but I only hold on to a couple because I don't want to be that's silly. I don't want to be selfish, but that's silly. So yeah, there are ones that are really important to me that were sort of like pivotal moments, or they have a presence in them that I can't let go of. It's really hard as an artist to, exhibit and sell work, because the work that I'm most attached to is this. This is my most recent painting. You can't have it, but but I know I can't do that, because that's what I'm showing. So it's conflict, but it's also about sharing what you have, and if someone wants it, happily sharing it. So does that answer the question? We're here in
But it's like, I feel like as an artist as well, like, I think I have a hard time in the creative process of like actually like making work. And so what do you think is like the biggest driving force for you to continue just making work and making it happen?
Well, I'm insanely driven. I think there are a lot of obstacles. So I look at it two ways. One is there's a time for everything. There's a time when you're not to make work that you're actually working on making work. Travel, I love to travel. I'm not making work when I'm traveling unless I'm at a residency, but that's informing my work. So there's allowing yourself that compassion there, so you don't like shame yourself because you're not making work. But on the other end, it's really defining why you do it. And I think I know why I do it now, but I could be wrong. But really defining what's important to you, and that might help it. And then setting habits. I treat it like a job. You know, you get up, you do this, you do this. You know, I don't wait for some sort of inspiration to come. If I did, none of this would be up here. So I treat it like a job. I love the hardness of it. I still do it because it's challenging. So if you're doing something that's not challenging you, find something that's challenging to do. I don't know, but that's just being a normal artist. It's just like, I'm struggling making work. I've gone through 6 months where, actually I just came out of a 6-month period where it was hard to make work. I still did it. I didn't do it as much because I don't know what was going on. But especially now when the world's so heavy, it can be hard because of the heaviness. Sorry.
Hey John, thank you for your presentation. The work is it's powerful, and it feels very psychologically charged and intense. I really appreciate it. So I came in a little bit late, so I'm sorry if you already talked about this, but when we came in, you were talking quite a bit about this otherness, the sense of otherness, and I couldn't tell if you were talking about I felt like you were talking about otherness within, but I couldn't tell if you were talking about otherness beyond oneself. So I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about what you mean by otherness.
Yes. So yes. Yes. So at the time of those individual works, it was otherness of self inside. But now I think of otherness as everything. Everything that's beyond what I can see. I know is there, but I can't see all of it.
So what does it mean inside, otherness?
Those parts of me that I know are there that I don't have full access to, those parts on the peripheral or just beyond peripheral, that I feel their presence, but I don't, whether it's emotions or experiences that are blocked or memories or whatever it is, it's something that is observable, but I can't observe it yet. But I feel it. So I feel it in my body, but cognitively, I'm getting nothing.
So aspects of yourself
Yeah.
that you haven't been able to access.
Yeah, and that extends to everyone around me. I probably, I feel the otherness of other people, like things I don't access. It's going to be different than my internal, right? But it's a similar type of resonance, I think.
Huh. Thank you.
As looking through all the different art pieces, sometimes there's a dramatic shift in the style or and I guess how do you approach those shifts? Is it more of a gradual where one painting you're slowly adapt different techniques, or is it just I'm feeling very different than your friend passed away and there's a very quick change?
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine that came with different techniques, different whatever it is. Was that very instant where you just put things down and that's what came up, or?
So some of those paintings were there was years in between them,
Mm-hmm.
but there is the gradual process of change through the process of making work. You change a little bit. And then there's also dramatic ones, and the dramatic ones I've learned, like if I'm getting irritable or I'm just like grumpy or depressed, I'm like, oh, there's a change is about to happen, a big one. And then it happens. With my friend passing, the work, that sort of mostly white silhouette figure work, I was at an end of it. I couldn't go anywhere with it anymore, and I just sat and like gathered all the tools that all the things that I learned, all the tools that I had in my toolbox as a painter, and sat down and like I'm just gonna start working and see where this goes. And that was a little painting, so I'm starting really small, and I like to work big because there was a lot of trepidation and going into this whole new place. Like, I had these pristine white backgrounds, and then it's just this muddy background, just going, but it felt really right. And so what happened, like when a lot of things happen when you die, one of the things that happened is like, I thought I was a pretty open-minded person before that. And then I realized, this is how my awareness changed. I realized that by thinking I'm a pretty open-minded person, I'm not being open-minded. So I'm negating my open-mindedness. And that's kind of how my head exploded, basically. And that, so it happens in many different ways. But for me, what I am doing these days is I read a lot, I look at a lot of art, I travel as much as I can, looking at a lot of art, I go to artist residency. And this helps my work to move along quicker. I do way too many studio visits and studio crits all the time. It's a big part of my practice because I'm gathering as much perspective about my work as possible, which allows it to move forward quicker. So that, I don't know if that part of your conversation, but a question, but in general. Question over here?
Yeah, when I found out that the museum was going to have this show, I was just so excited because I felt really connected to the art that I saw that was going to be coming in, and as we got to hang the show, I was really moved by the intensity of the feeling that you get when you see these pieces, and then across from them you see these other like really funny, interesting, humorous. Like Mudflap Mama is my favorite piece in the show. It's not necessarily the one I connect with like on a deeper level, but I love seeing people's reactions to it. It just makes me laugh and like gives the show that lightness. Can you just say a little bit more about that piece?
About humor and darkness?
Yeah, and also Mudflap Mama specifically.
I will talk about Mudflap Mama because Tom over here, it's also his favorite painting of the show. I'll talk about humor first. Humor is really powerful, and it kind of gets you in the door, and then you talk about real serious things. Mudflap Mama. So, all right, the painting came about because I was driving down the road and I saw those horrible silhouettes of women on the back of mud flaps. And so I did some research, and it turns out that that's a symbol that started as a symbol for a trucking company, and it's still present. Obviously today we see it everywhere. And so I thought, I'm going to flip this around. So I took the trucker, and I don't know if everybody's seen it yet, but I took the trucker, I put him on the hearth, completely naked, and then all these women having tea around him, just flip-flopping it, just to really talk about, just talk about how absurd those little silhouettes are. Enough, please. Let's grow up a little bit here, or a lot of it. And so that Mudflap Mom was kind of, it's funny, but it deals with very serious things of objectification of women and body images. And that guy just doesn't care. He's got, it's huge. Anyway, that's that. But as far as sometimes I need to use humor for my own self to get to where the work needs to go, and other times it's more direct. But humor, you can look at this woman here, maybe she's a little humorous. But humor is in there somewhere. It's a great tool to use to get to places that you can't access directly, or you don't want to kill someone or keep them from looking at it in the first place.
You talked about stimulus for the creative process, and what I've noticed, John, is you've had numerous residencies in multiple countries which offer stimulation. And then second, you have invited artists into the Knox Gallery and had them talk about what their creativity was and what they were attempting to achieve. Which of those two do you find most useful to what you are doing and how you advance?
Oh, these are hard questions. I love residencies. And it's great because you can just focus on making art. I know I have bills to pay at home, but they're not on my mind. I can do 3 times as much work in 2 weeks that I can do in 3 months at home. And so that's a great aspect, which doesn't happen when I bring people to Knox. So Knox was a gallery I ran for 10 years that I still use as my studio. And we sometimes have studio booths with artists there. But the thing that is the same with both of them is the connection that happens with people. I love residencies because I have met such amazing people, and it seems like everyone that goes there, with minor exceptions, is generous and open and connected. I am friends with almost everybody in every residency I've been on still, and it's just amazing to meet great people like that. And the residency is just like a concentration of that sort of thing that we had in the studio too, yeah, with other artists. Any other questions?
That's kind of a question. First bit, are you hopeful about things like the loneliness epidemic? And then I'm curious, and you just kind of touched on it with the residencies, but museums have been for the last couple of years tackling the loneliness, especially post-COVID and through different programming and that to bring people together. I'm wondering if you've seen any examples, not necessarily in the museum world, but in general, of ways to kind of tackle that problem and bring people together.
I am hopeful.
Very good.
Because every time you exhibit any amount of love to someone, it adds, it ripples through the world. And if a lot of us are doing that, then it's a big ripple. We can't change what's going on, whatever you guys think politically, I don't care. But all the darkness that's going on in our country and in the world itself, I can't. But I can go to someone who thinks the exact opposite as I do and befriend them and learn and try to understand why they think they do and learn to respect it and forgive them for being wrong. That's probably the joke. But what I have seen, so I have through residencies and other things, I have a few friends on the East Coast in New York, and there's a show that just was up the last few months about love, and so there are artists, and this was an artist-run space doing that. I haven't been to many museums the last couple of months, but yeah, so I think everyone is like, this is what we can do. Artists, a lot of artists are terrified about what's going on. More so on the East Coast, I've noticed, than here. I guess we're a bit more removed. But yeah, the idea of love, of connection, of being generous. That's so important. Being generous with everyone we come in contact with. It's so difficult. Being generous with ourselves. Being okay that you're not doing work right now, you know? That generosity, there's a lot of hope in that for me.
How do you juggle, or did you juggle, I guess, being a parent while pursuing your passion? Sons? No, I'm just kidding.
He didn't. When my kids were little, so I got divorced 12 years ago, so it gets a little more difficult, but easier because they're with me half the time.
That's my situation. So that's why
Yeah,
I'm curious.
but before that, I was committed to being with them every evening. And we had a great time. He doesn't remember any of it, but we had a great time. And I'd take one day a week and I'd go do art stuff. And I own my own company, and so I would make time for my studio, but it never cut into my family. Well, I don't think they ever saw me on Saturdays, but so that whole 6-day, 7-day-a-week thing that I started in art school, that's just been my whole life. Well, it's 6 days, but that's the necessity of being an artist, is you have to work a job usually and do your craft. But a lot of people say, or said before I had children, well, first of all, I lived in LA, and they thought I was crazy to be married. And then I had a child, and they're like,
How dare you?
what are you even thinking? Which is ironic, because I took my oldest son, we lived in LA till he was 3, to all my openings, and people would just like grab, he was like a social, he was a networker, because they would come and want to hold him and everything, because there weren't many babies around. But I feel like having kids added to my creativity. They are so amazing to have around. And you can, you're dealing, maybe you're in the diaper stage or whatever, wherever you're at, it's just, I don't know. Now I'm learning a lot from them now, about what's going on in the music world and stuff. But at the time, they just love without condition.
Yeah.
And that's powerful, and that really helped my creativity. So I just made time. And it, once they're 16 or so, you have a lot more time. It's easier. Any other questions?
You kind of talked about at one point about like how the world has gotten very heavy and there are a lot of different things going on. And with like how many kind of things that are happening and things you probably feel passionate about, feel like, I maybe want to say something about that. How do you as an artist choose kind of what to focus on during your career?
It chooses me. So I'm just, happy-go-lucky doing work, and all of a sudden, I'm doing work about, how we share space. This is obvious. And the studio crits and stuff helps with that, because people are like, it's obvious this is what you're doing, because you don't see it right off. You're making all this work, and it could take years for you to really understand what it means. Like that, I called it Brother Be Gone work, the dark little drawings about my friend. It's been 3 years, and now I know what I was doing exactly. Now, finally. Back then, I was just having I sort of knew, half knew. So I let the work carry me, and so having a rigorous work ethic, aside from the times are just difficult, helps to propel through that. And so and that's really about trusting yourself. There's stuff inside of you, like 85% of us is, cut off. It's not in consciousness. And it's talking to us all the time. And just trusting that instinct, or whatever you want to call it, to guide you to where you make work that you need to make. Because you need to make work, you need to make work that the rest of us need to see. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that
Okay.
was perfect. That was good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, everyone. Wonderful.